So tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about form and how it's used as a way of practice and teaching in Zen. You may have noticed that tonight the cushions are right up against one another, and this is traditional. It's the way I was trained, and when COVID began, and we could start sitting again, that's when the cushions started to be more spread out to allow for distancing. Traditionally, the cushions are pressed right up against one another. We're asked to come and sit with one another. It's a group practice. There's a lot of sort of aspects of form that challenge us in this way. You know, like when you come in the Zendo, you take the next available seat. You don't leave a gap. I think it's a habit that we develop, particularly in this kind of obsessively individualistic culture, you know, always to have this sort of buffer of space. And the form that we use in Zen, I think for a lot of people, it's kind of intense. You know, there's like a lot of components. It's a heavily choreographed thing that we do. And certainly when I began, and I think maybe for a lot of people, when you first come in the door, it seems like this is kind of crazy. And what's this all about? And you know, what's all this meaningless ritual for? Couldn't we just make it more simple? And I think, yeah, if the point of it was for each individual person to just come and have a nice period of meditation, yeah, you could make it a lot more simple. But the practice that we're engaged in here is rooted in awakening and wisdom and compassion. And it's rooted in this in a very sort of practical way. The form that we have, the form that we carry here is based in a residential living together community, a sangha. In the monastery, these seats that you're all on would be sort of like double length and folded, and then at night you would just roll them out where you are, and that's also where you sleep. And so, as you can imagine, you become very aware of the relationships that you have with the people around you. And you become very aware of the impact that your neighbor has on you. First of all, I think that's how it starts. God, that person beside me is annoying. He snores and he farts, and oh my God, I'm trying to meditate and become a Buddha here. It's terrible. And as your practice deepens, you start to realize that it's not just a one-way road, that you're impacting and affecting the people who are around you as well. And as we step into a practice of community, as we step into a practice of waking up and being of benefit, being compassionate, having the English having its root in to suffer with, to recognize the suffering of another as being not separate from you. There's a real practicality in the way we practice the form. It's not just a theory. As we deepen, as our awareness sort of opens up, we start to notice that little things can create the story. A piece of robe hanging over the front of our cushion is a bit of a distraction. Somebody shifting around in their seat is a little bit of a distraction. And so when we notice how it impacts us ourselves, we can feel the responsibility to to know that when we do it, it's the same. When we are not being mindful with how we're behaving or using the space, that we are impacting the practice, the experience of other people. And beyond that, other beings, human and other than human. And I say over and over again, the Zendo is the microcosm. What happens in the Zendo is like a really, it's like a bonsai, a miniature version of the whole world. So we can kind of extrapolate that and go, oh yeah, when I'm not mindful in how I go about making my living, or when I'm not aware when I'm driving my car, or when I'm not connected and in relationship with my partner when we're having a conversation, or even when we're making love, that's going to impact that person. And so in a lot of ways, this form is a way of stepping into accepting responsibility for our lives, how we're living our lives, the impact that our lives have on ourselves and on the planet and on all of the beings around us. And it begins just by sitting together with other people. Being aware of how we're breathing, being aware of how we're walking, being aware of how when we bow, we can just bow for ourselves. Oh, ring the bell, bow. Or we can actually, in that bow, be making relationship with the person beside us, with the person at the other end of the room, so that when the Zendo bows, the whole Zendo bows together in relationship. And there's a big difference, and it's you feel that. And sometimes you sort of gradually find your way there. Sometimes it just happens. And when it happens, something can sink in. If you're open, you're aware, something just slips in. And that's a teaching. In between our periods of zazen, sitting zen, sitting jhana, sitting meditation, sitting dissolution, we have these periods of kinhin, which is a walking zen, walking meditation. In the Rinzai tradition, we walk in step and close behind. It's not a break. In a way, it's an opportunity for us to move. Certainly, it's an opportunity for us to sort of shift into movement. But that's also a teaching, that the awareness that we're able to cultivate or realize in sitting meditation, it's not terribly useful if it's the only place that we can access that stillness, access that connectedness. So we do walking meditation as a means of taking that stillness into movement, into a very simple movement, walking step by step by step. Very simple. All we need to do is just pay attention to the person in front of us, breathe, keep in step. So what happens? So easy. You'll notice that you start to think about the next thing. You start to think about what comes after the sit. You start to think about what happened in the last sit, or trying to remember the thing that came up and then you look down at your feet and you say, oh, shit, I fell out of step. And you try to fix that. And if you're aware, you notice that because of that momentary lapse in mindfulness, the whole line behind you out of step because they've been paying attention and following you. It's a teaching. To the degree that we're awake and aware and mindful, we're also to that degree more awake and aware of the impacts that we're having. Of course, we can't be aware of all the impacts that we're having. So, as we practice, we're doing all of these things as a way of kind of stepping out of the perspective which views ourselves as being fundamentally separate and distinct, disconnected, independent of everything else that's in the universe. This is the same sort of mindset, the same belief system that makes it okay for us to throw garbage out the car window. It makes it okay for us to take things that don't belong to us. It makes it okay for us to take advantage of circumstances and situations because we're just more clever than the other person. This same idea that somehow there are rules for all of those people out there, but they don't apply to me, or that the impacts of the environment or the government or the local community can happen, and a person or any person or I can somehow manage to not be impacted by those happenings. What we start to see as we engage with the form more and more, what starts to not just seeing it, not just intellectually understanding it, but experiencing it in a very tangible way, is that we are interconnected, we're interrelated, that the activity, the actions that I take, they impact the whole cosmos. So sometimes I think that Zen is a really great remedy for both the tendency that some of us can have, or maybe all of us can have at some times, to think that we're outside, that we're beyond, that we're exceptional, that we, can exist in this world without being marred by it. And it's also a remedy for this idea that we're insignificant and inconsequential. When we notice that in a room full of people, our slightest movement moves the minds of every person in the room, impacts all six senses of every human in the room, and beyond that, maybe we can't even perceive it. It has innumerable impacts on innumerable beings. Literally, every move that you make changes the universe. So there's a responsibility that comes with that. A responsibility that's shaped by our awareness, by the depth of our capacity to be in relationship and to hold those relationships in a good and loving and compassionate way. If we know that the things that we do impact the world, they have impact. then doesn't it make sense for us to move and to speak and to act in ways that are wise, in ways that are loving, in ways that are compassionate? And I want to be careful. I've got to finish because the time's up, but I also want to sort of end on a little bit of a lighter note, because the flip side of that is that we can become totally neurotic. Oh my God, everything that I do impacts the universe. Oh my God, I don't feel like I'm very mindful, so I'm probably just walking around screwing things up and upsetting people all the time. We also have to walk with lightness. It is not possible for us to get it right all the time. And that's okay. Our practice isn't about being perfect. Our practice isn't about getting it right all the time. Our practice isn't about not causing any harm at all, because the truth is, it is impossible. All of the sila, those precepts that we have in Buddhism, they're all impossible. Maybe that's a way bigger talk than we have time for today. Maybe I'll talk about the sila next time. For now, I think I just want to say thank you. Thank you for stepping into relationship. Thank you for stepping into the practice of mindfulness, of awareness. Thank you for stepping into a practice in community. Thank you.